Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk specifically about Dungeons & Dragons as pop culture, right? So we're coming out of the 2023 Manic Panic. Others called it the 2023 OGL Crisis. It was a major period in the history of tabletop role-playing games. The rest of the tabletop role-playing game industry, specifically not all of the tabletop role-playing games. Actually, I think a lot of tabletop role-playing game independents, they really didn't have a horse in this, right? Like, basically, the people who had issues with Dungeons & Dragons and why this huge feud broke out in 2023 January was the OGLers, right? Their copy energy to, we're willing to burn D&D to the ground if we can't copy in every possible way, right? That was very much communicated with the words D&D be gone. The OSR, they're like, old school revival, like we're confused about who we are and what we are, and our identity is, we feel that our identity is merged with D&D, but the reality is we're probably D&D's greatest enemies at this point. So again, D&D beyond and D&D be gone. This terrible threat, shouted by many of the OSR. The ORC, the open role-playing creatives, right? This new group saying, hey, we really want to transform copying and make people think it matters. D&D be gone, right? So there's this moment in time where you had this massive feud, right? And so now we're on the other side of it, right? And I'm actually starting to get, I'm almost getting like kind of a really nice, like comfortable, almost like a warm blanket is setting over, because the nice thing is in January 2023, the OGLers and the OSRs and the orcs just got to shout, right? But now they have to produce, and they're under the gun, right? Like the virtual gun, and you could see Project Black Flag. The first playtest was just horrible, like a whole bunch of words and energies, and literally nothing new. Like they were just like, we're gonna open up a can of D&D, we're gonna pour it into a new bowl and call it Project Black Flag, and you're like, ooh, that is calming, right? What a big pile of garbage, right? Like they've produced nothing, right? Like it's just amazing how little they're doing, how much energy they're expending to produce nothing different, right? And then also Shadow Dark RPG. I was really very excited to see the Shadow Dark RPG come out and look like just an absolute garbage product that would have been on the shelves in the 1980s or the 1990s. All black and white, right? And no color art, and the line for quality is already set, right? Like, and so you're seeing this, like, the other thing is we don't have to pretend anymore, right? The OGL and the OSR and the ORC are in direct competition with Dungeons & Dragons, and they had promised that they could match or do better, right? And now that the foot is on, that it's time to shut up and do, right? They're not. They are doing things. They actually are taking action. And that's the great thing about the society we live in, right? Once you do something, right, people get to come in and say, no, you promised more, you promised better. And I can tell you right now, Shadow Dark RPG and Project Black Flag playtest does not point to anything better for any player or any game master or any dungeon master, right? There's nothing there, right? Like the king, the king has no clothes, right? Like, and that's the reality of it, right? And that's what we're seeing. So, and also one of the things is, like, as you're seeing these failures, why do we reach this failure point, right? Well, we reach this failure point because the OSR, the ORC, and and you hear them say it all the time, the OGLers, the OSR, and the ORC, they're like, I don't care about this, I don't care about that. What I care about is the game good, right? And this is the thing, right? Dungeons & Dragons has reached a level where they know they are releasing good Dungeons & Dragons products 9 out of 10 times. Now, I have to be honest, 9 out of 10 times. Radiant Citadel was a terrible book last year, right? And it really didn't bring any honor to the name of Dungeons & Dragons. And it was a D&D canon hardback, and it's in the history now, right? And it literally brought nothing to the table for anything, for any player. Like, no new spells, no new magic items, no new species, no new backgrounds, nothing, literally nothing, right? Which is abominable at this point. Only on the other side do we see where there's an entire book that presents nothing but lore without any mechanical benefits to a single player, right? We can all say, yeah, that was a misfire, right? But D&D knows 9 out of 10 times they're going to deliver good, great, or transformative, right? And I remember, I think it was David Chappelle was being interviewed. I think it was by David Letterman, and he was like, and David Letterman's like, you ever get out there and just worry that you're not going to be able to deliver? And David Chappelle's like, he just laughed and he goes, no, he goes, I'm like a pilot. I know the plane's going to go up and it's going to land, right? I'm definitely going to get people to laugh. I don't need to try to do that anymore, right? And he says, so basically, and then when you look at Dave Chappelle, what he's been doing is he is setting the bar for every other comedian. He's like, I don't worry about making people laugh. That's automatic. And that's where D&D is, right? D&D's like, it ain't about making a good tabletop role-playing game. That's why you fail OGL. That's why you fail OSR. That's why you fail Orc, right? Because you're trying to make a good game. We mastered that 20 years ago, right? And what we're doing now is we are pop culture, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean pop culture, Marvel, right? Harry Potter, right? Stephen King, massive, overarching, American, capitalist success at every level. And you see it coming with Dungeons & Dragons, right? Dungeons & Dragons is printed on shirts and sold in Target and Walmart, right? And there are people who wear Dungeons & Dragons shirts now who don't play Dungeons & Dragons, right? The same way Thrasher, you'll see Thrasher shirts all over by people who have never been on a skateboard, right? But they're like, oh, this is a cool thing from the 90s and the 2000s, and I'm going to wear it because it's hip. And that's what D&D is. They're like, oh, I don't know nothing about D&D except what I saw in Stranger Things. But I do know D&D is popular culture, right? And that's what Dungeons & Dragons is working on right now. They are like saying, we're going to make sure Dungeons & Dragons is known publicly throughout the world. We're going to have massive successes in Japan, right? Even though Dungeons & Dragons is primarily printed in English, right? We're going to have global successes. We're going to have merchandise successes. We're going to be popular culture, right? And Harry Potter, massive popular culture right now, right? Hogwarts Legacy, exactly like Dungeons & Dragons, forbidden product, right? Literally low millions of people coming out and said, you're forbidden from playing this game. The sales were $850 million in the first 2 weeks. It's almost certainly now passed over $1 billion in sales, right? And because it's popular culture, there's an armor that brand wears. And it's the same with Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is like, we're not trying to make a good game. We don't need to try to make a good game anymore. We have mastered that and been creating amazing D&D canon hardbacks for 20 years. Hasbro knows what it's doing. It's got 2 decades. They can, it's like a layup, right? Making a good game, making a good D&D canon hardback is a layup. Sometimes you missed a layup, but you better be hitting at 90%, and that's exactly what Dungeons & Dragons is doing. And now that we're in February of 2023, the shut up and put up month, right? OGL, OSR, and Orc are not putting up. They are failing left and right, right? And it was easy to talk. It's not easy to do, right? So that's where we arrive. And the reason why Dungeons & Dragons continues to win, it is because it is genuinely pop culture, right? Exactly like Stephen King, exactly like Star Wars, exactly like Marvel. Not like DC, not like DC anymore. I'm sad to say there's been so much damage done to by the DCEU that I actually think DC has really fallen out of popular culture. It's popularly hated. It's not actually popularly. It's not considered. It's hate culture, right? Like there's a lot of people who just despise. I'm incredibly frustrated with DC at this point. There was really this opportunity recently where they had a chance to fix the entire thing, and they just let it cross by. And we're like, we're going to serve up more pablum crap. You guys can eat it. And I'm like, I really don't want to. And I'm getting to the point where I really dislike this brand a lot, right? And so, and D&D is the exact opposite, right? They go through trials, but they come out the other end winners. And D&D, without a doubt, you're going to see it at the end of this month, right? The popular culture, the exclamation points at the end of D&D, they're going to be adding them big time with this new American blockbuster. Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.